Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to do a deep dive and give you all of my advice and all the guides that I can and all of the character suggestions that I can for floors 30, 31, and 32 of Shadowland because they're brand new. They're actually more difficult than I originally gave them credit for, and it's really important that you can get up to at least stage 32 because that is where you're going to get an extra bio selector. I believe it's 150 bios, so it's a huge extra amount of bios that you can farm weekly, which will allow you to unlock and rank up and, tier 2 more characters faster and build up bios for their uniforms. It's basically the new stage 15, but now it's all the way up at 32. So obviously you're going to have to do some building if you've just been going to stage 15 and then stopping, because you're going to need solo clears from 16 up to 29. So we're just covering 30 to 32, but these stages are by and large much more difficult than any of the other stages that come before it, with a few notable exceptions, like maybe stage 29 with the Black Order is more difficult than some of these. But here's the thing, we're going to look over here. These stages and all of the stages you're going to see in the new stages are difficult mainly because not only does it introduce new characters or characters that have new uniforms, like for example Hulk's new uniform, rather than having World War Hulk, he's got the Endgame Hulk. The thing that you have to remember, and I didn't really touch on this enough, and I didn't emphasize this enough in my first couple of videos about Shadowland, is that these characters, they don't have their passive effects, but they do have their abilities, like their skills. Sorry, I said that sort of incorrectly. They don't have their passive abilities, but they do have their skill abilities. So any effect that they get from a skill is present in the Shadowland run. So for example, Sabretooth will not have his healing. His healing is on a passive, and that just does not apply in Shadowland, which is great. But as you see from over here, on his 5th skill, he does have penetration. He penetrates barrier and shield. So if you bring someone with a guard, and you think that guard hit is going to save you, guess what? He's probably going to penetrate it, which is pretty bad for you. Juggernaut, likewise, he doesn't have a uniform and he doesn't have his passive heal from Cynicalex's avatar, but he does have immunity and damage accumulation. He does have all defense down. He's got fracture. He's got a 4-second paralyze. He's a pretty scary dude. If he starts hitting you, it's pretty much lights out. So that's something that you need to remember. For example, Hulk, the endgame Hulk that we saw there, not the immortal Hulk, he has iframe ignore. That's right. He's got iframe ignore on box or shuffle. So you absolutely have to take this into consideration when you are building up teams and sort of practicing against these game modes and against these bosses, because it can be very difficult. So I'll go through all the most important effects. We've touched on these bosses here. Besides Beast, Cyclops has iframe ignore as well. Strife has fear, which can be really bad, and Apocalypse has those fists that slam down the floor and will also I think apply fear. We talked about the Hulk having the iframe immunity, or the iframe, ignore. And you also have Ant-Man with the really long iframe on 4 and the choo-choo train all defense down on 5. Wave has all defense down and she summons clones. Arrow has a lot of guard break. Luna has the charm and the freeze. White Fox has charm or entice as well. And then Crescent has reflect, iframes, penetration. Really, really scary. Really, really strong. So yeah, you have to keep that in mind. Also, for really quick rundown for this one over here, for the villain stage, this one is particularly tough because Beast has physical reflect, and then I believe Strife has energy reflect. So you pretty much just have to try and stay in iframes the whole time. So I'll give you guys some teams now to try. I'll give you guys some individual characters that can clear these stages. This is by far the hardest one. So if you don't have any of the characters for this stage, you can probably start skipping it from now on and choosing one of the other stages, like the Avengers or the Agents of Atlas stage. But for this one, the characters that I found that were able to do it solo for me were as follows. So we've got Hydro Man and Molten Man. These are both really good characters. They're both bio selector characters, so you can build them up via Shadowland rewards. You've also got Crossbones. Now Crossbones will need his new uniform, so Hydro Man and Molten Man are better than him because of that. They're cheaper, but he's also a possibility. Mysterio's really good. He needs a uniform, but he's given to you for free at 6 stars, so it's a much easier build-up, but you will need to get him to tier 2. And then Hydra Cap is another option for you at tier 2. Obviously, tier 3 is amazing, but even at tier 2, he can do it. And then Red Guardian is actually a really amazing recommendation, because you can use Red Guardian on this stage and on the hero stage if you have his uniform. So Red Guardian is actually very flexible. Now, you have to watch out for the reflect. but that is something to consider. Another thing to consider is some level 60 characters. I can't speak for all level 60 characters. I tried with Dormammu and he got absolutely destroyed, but check this out. We're going to queue up here really quickly, and you're going to play with Anti-Man, and you'll be like, level 60 characters can't do this stage, Alex. You have to get level 62 characters. By and large, I do think you need to bring level 62 characters, but in this case, a level 60 Anti-Man does more than enough work, and I don't know why it is. You can see they're still dodging a lot of his attacks, but Anti-Man just does so much damage. He's got a CTP of energy. He does so much damage that he just completely obliterates them. Now, it might be difficult there with Strife if he gets a hit off, if he gets the reflect. Keep in mind with reflect, it doesn't activate automatically. They have to hit you first in order for the reflect bubble to pop up. So if you lock Anti-Man with Anti-Man, if you lock Strife down and he can't get the reflect bubble up because he can't hit you because he can't cast skills, then you never have to take the reflect damage. Or if you're an iframe, you also won't take reflect damage. On the other hand, you can see a level 60 character over here like Adam Warlock. He can do this stage, but unlike Anti-Man, this is the interesting thing, and it may be due to typing. I just realized it. The fact is that Anti-Man is universal, which means that he has an advantage against blast speed in combat. Because Adam Warlock is blast, you can see he does more damage to Captain America and Thor and Hulk, but he doesn't do very much damage to Black Widow. So I'm not gonna do this whole minute here of battling because it's gonna take a long time, and I'm gonna spoil it for you. He has enough damage to kill Hulk and Captain America, and I think it's due to type advantage, even though they're dodging like half of his attacks. But he doesn't have enough damage, or he almost doesn't have enough damage to kill Black Widow in the time that it takes. It actually looks like he has enough damage here, but it's very close. He's gonna last, it's gonna be like a 59, 58 second fight, and I don't actually know if he'll be able to clear the second half of the fight because Ant-Man has really long iframes, and he could just dodge enough to make you not have enough damage. Also, if you're wondering how well Odin does as another level 60, and it's kind of weird, Anti-Man does well, and Adam Warlock do well, and they were released at the end of 2017, the early 2018. But for Dormammu and Odin, who were late 2016, early 2017, basically 1 year earlier, they're terrible. So you can see here, there's only a year apart. It's like a year and a bit, maybe a year and a half apart from Anti-Man, what's his name? Adam Warlock to Odin, and you can see, look at this. This is a joke. So I'm not sure if there's something in the coding, but yeah, Odin just can't do it. So I can't really say level 60s can do these fights, but yeah, some level 60s can, and most level 60s just can't. So yeah, those are the suggestions for the villain stage. For the hero stage, they're the same. It requires heroes here, and then it requires heroes here. There's no reflect on either stage, I believe. But as for the hero stages, I have multiple suggestions. You can use a bunch of different characters, and I'll showcase some of them. But honestly, some really, really good options. Darkhawk is amazing for this stage. Bishop is really good as well, and you can get him from the support shop, the Rift shop. We also have characters like, who else did I use here? I used Archangel. Archangel's awesome, or Angel is awesome. You don't even need his uniform. Iron Hammer is another really good one. Crystal is very good for this as well. Swordmaster, I don't even have him at level 70. I have him at level 62. Swordmaster easily solos this. Gorilla Man can also do this. War Tiger can also do this. Groot can do this, and Red Guardian with the uniform can do this. But I want to show Moon Girl. Again, Moon Girl's not the best character in the world, but I want to show you something specific with Moon Girl that you can try to take away from this fight. So we know that Hulk has iframe ignore. He doesn't have penetration, but he has iframe ignore. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use Moon Girl's third skill to give ourselves invincibility. We're going to use her other skills, and then we're going to make sure we use her fourth skill, which gives us the silence. And we're going to try and silence the Hulk every single time if we can. We're going to go over where the Hulk is and silence him. If we silence him, then he can't use his iframe ignore skill. So even if we have a situation where we are in iframe, like when we're doing our fifth skill, we have a guard hit and we're in iframe, we can still stop him from using that skill, that really important skill. Silence becomes really, really powerful in Shadowland because that's where all of your enemies get their power from. They don't have passive effects. They don't have their tier 2 passives. They only have the effects that their skills give them. So if their skills give them effects like fracture or paralysis or mind control or charm or freeze, or in Hulk's case, iframe ignore, you can silence them, and then they can only do basic attacks, and then you can just clobber them. So that's all of the advice that I have for stage 30. You saw there that I can actually solo it with Moon Girl. So you know what? We're actually going to go right back in and solo it with Swordmaster. Swordmaster versus Swordmaster. Now, combat types in general are going to have an easier time on this stage because of the fact that they have the type advantage, but you still have to kind of deal with the annoying strategy that they use where they will spam skills that have their own immunity or their own invincibility, like my own Swordmaster does. So you do have to make sure that you have enough damage in between to kill them within a minute, but once you get that down, it's actually not so bad. The second phase here, you just have to watch out for the penetration on Crescent, but he does a really good job. The Swordmaster does a really good job of guard break, and you can see he really keeps them under wraps with a ton of guard break on all of his abilities. And so because of that, and that fifth skill has a huge AoE, I actually really like Swordmaster for these stages because of that crazy AoE and just locking them down. You just sit in that fifth skill, and he does such a good job of putting them in their place. Really quickly here, just to demonstrate Reflect, I said that the enemy has to hit you to get the Reflect. They actually have to do damage. So here you can see they're hitting me, but because my immunity is up, they're not doing damage. And because they're not doing damage, you can see that none of them have the Reflect bubble up. But as soon as my immunity goes down, it's on its last second here, they're going to hit me. And now Luna Snow has the Reflect, which is that yellow icon with the arrow. We're going to wait a little bit longer, and now they all have the Reflect. Mordo, Luna, and Wave. They actually have to deal damage, not just hit you. Also keep in mind that if you put up a buff like immunity or invincibility, and any of the characters has incapacitation on their skills, so for example, if you go and look at, I believe it's either Luna or Wave has incapacitation, that will actually remove your active buff. And guess what happens when it removes your active buff? Yeah, it's Wave's fourth skill. She has incapacitation. When it removes your active buff, it removes your immunity or your invincibility. So if you're triggering your immunity or your invincibility on these stages, just keep in mind that a lot of the newer characters have incapacitation on one or two of their skills that can remove your best defense and then leave you vulnerable. Now, as for floor 31, the Rumble floors, we have Beast, the Mordo stage, and the Universal stage. These are fairly straightforward, but very difficult in terms of the requirements. They're very, very narrow, especially that Groot one. So from left to right, we'll see here that the stage here, it requires blast types that deal energy damage because they have physical reflect. You can use physical damage characters, physical blast type characters like Captain America, Hydra Cap, or Red Skull or something like that. But again, if they hit you and do damage, they're going to reflect. And then if you don't iframe, you die. So not only do you need a blast type that deals energy damage, but you also need a villain. Because you don't need a villain, but you basically need a villain. If you try to use a hero here, you do reduced damage, so you're going to have to basically overwhelm them with crazy damage and crazy all defense down to compensate for that. The middle stage, the Mordo stage, you need to bring a combat type that deals physical damage because there's energy reflect, and it also needs to be a hero because villains have a massive reduction in damage. And then that over there on the far right stage, this is the toughest stage. You need to bring a universal type that deals energy damage, and they're a hero. The thing is with universals, there's not many universals that are free to play. And then furthermore, most universals have mixed damage. So for example, Thor is mostly energy, but he has physical on the end of 5. He has physical on 1 and 2. So he can kill himself to the physical reflect by accident. Shadow Shell has a lot of physical. Slapstick is almost entirely physical. There's some physical in Doctor Doom's skills, even though he's a villain. There's a bunch of physical damage in Hyperion's skills. So even Loki, for example, he's a villain, but when he throws his knives on the third skill, that's physical damage. So it's really hard to come up with a universal. I was only able to come up with 2 free-to-play universals here that you could use, Dr. Voodoo or a tier 2 Captain Marvel. Keep in mind, Captain Marvel needs to be in binary form or radiant form in order to do energy damage. If you don't use her 5th skill or if it's on cooldown, there is mixed physical damage in her abilities, so you can die to reflect. So this stage is probably the worst one. If you don't have either of these 2 characters at tier 2 and you don't have any other good physical damage universal tier 2, I would not recommend doing it. I tried with villains, it does not work. As for these other 2 stages here, for this one, it actually has a lot of the same suggested characters that I gave you for the last stage, for stage 30, but they are all blast villains. So Hydra Cap is great. Red Skull can work, although he has physical damage, so you have to be very, very careful when you play to not get reflected. Mysterio is another amazing option, but you can't use him on 2 floors. Hydra Man is another amazing option. And then I actually did test, and I'll show you, Morgan Le Fay works really well on this stage. The thing is with Shadowland, if it says combat, blast, or speed types, you can use universals. If it says universals, you can't really use combat, blast, or speed types. So yeah. And then for the Mordo stage, you have to bring a combat type. Again, a lot of the same combat types. The free-to-play ones that I recommended are really good. Actually, you know what? Tier 2 endgame Hulk. He's a hero. He works really, really well. Warpath can work. Brawn can work if you guys have his new uniform, not the original Amadeus Cho. Gorilla Man, Swordmaster, and Guardian, Red Guardian are also great for that stage. But now let me show you Morgan Le Fay. So here we go. This is actually a pretty tough stage. What you want to do is use her immunity and just hang in the immunity for as long as you can. 2 seconds, 1 second. And then when she's out of it, use the iframe. And then you want to use her third skill, Mind Control. Then spam 2 and 1 and then back into 4. And you just want to drag this out as long as you can. You really want to hang on until the very last second and then use that Mind Control. It's only a 2-second Mind Control. It's very, very short. You do have a little bit of guard break on, I believe it's 2, where she summons these orbs. The orbs, or maybe it's 1. It's 1, yeah. See these orbs? They guard break. They're really nice, but you don't want to rely on them too much because, you know, you could die. Okay, 1 second left. We're going to summon the orbs again. Okay, we died to Killmonger. We were being a little bit too passive. The really good thing about Morgan Le Fay for Shadowland is she revives. So that's the really nice thing. She also heals, so you can recover some of your lost HP. We just have to finish this Sabretooth off, and then we are done. But it's tough. This is my level 70 Morgan Le Fay with a CTP of energy. This is not easy. And if you don't have a CTP of energy, it's a pretty expensive one to give to Morgan Le Fay. It's a pretty expensive CTP. You're going to take longer to clear this stage. She can do it, and she has all defense down and mind control and healing and revive. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And now we come, of course, to the final stage. This is the stage you want to aim for every single week because you're going to get that juicy 150 biometric selector. This is huge because this almost doubles the number of bioselectors that you get, because normally for a week of Shadowland doing stages 5, 10, and 15, you get 225 bios. So now you get 375 bios. It's awesome. And of course, you can use that to build up a lot of the characters that we talked about. Look at this bottom row. Look at these bottom 2 rows. Hydro Man, Dr. Voodoo, Swordmaster, Gorilla Man, War Tiger, Darkhawk, Red Guardian, Viper. All of these characters at the bottom, Molten Man, are really good for Shadowland, and they're not farmable anywhere else, so you should definitely get cracking. But you guys know how it is for this one. You have to use a Spider Sense ability character, so it's a very short list. I don't really have to explain much to you, except that Spider-Gwen cannot do it at all. I'm pretty much convinced that she can because she's only level 60, but I will check now. I will sort of test on my own if Silk can do it. So it's really weird. I've heard of players with level 66 or 64 Arachnite or Spider-Man 2099 or Spider-Man clearing this stage, but for some reason I tried 62, 64, and 66 with Silk. I tried before and after upgrading her type enhancement to level 1 from level 0. There's just nothing she can do. She does damage sometimes in the thousands and sometimes in the hundreds. It really varies wildly. So I can't really recommend her. Maybe there's someone out there with a really pimped out level 70, really roided out, juiced out Silk level 70, but I think it's a huge investment and I would not recommend it. Obviously, if you have Spider-Man 2099, he is by far the best option for this. Second best option, of course, would be Spider-Man himself because he can go all the way up to tier 3. And then third best option would probably be almost a tie between Arachnite and Miles Morales. But yeah, it's basically just how it goes. Obviously, the only free-to-play option here is either Miles or, like, completely free-to-play, is either Miles or Spider-Man, but everyone here except Arachnite needs a uniform, but instead of a 1,000 crystal uniform, Arachnite needs 1,500 crystals for 2 months worth of his heroic quest. So this is pretty much the most bummer stage because of this fact, but I believe there are some other characters that can do this. So good news, there are more characters that can do this stage in case you haven't built up the Spider-Verse characters yet. I did some more testing and I've come to the following conclusions. If you sort of brute force this stage with just crazy amounts of damage, especially if you bring in someone that has type advantage, i.e. a blast type for the first part and then a combat type or a universal for both parts, and they have something like a CTP of energy or a CTP of rage or they're tier 3, you can probably complete it. So I was able to brute force this stage pretty quickly with Professor X. Again, it might depend on how much damage you have and how much attack you have on your cards, etc. But brute force did work to an extent. Also, lots of all defense down worked, So even though I don't have a CTP of Rage or Energy on my Deadpool, I have a CTP of Destruction. The all defense down from Holiday Lady Deadpool's 5th skill was enough, the minus 80%. The minus whatever it is from the 4th skill, 50, 60, was also enough. However, the minus 50% all defense from Slapstick was not enough to clear the stage, but Slapstick has a regen, so maybe with a damage proc or a CTP of Destruction or something, Slapstick would be able to do it. Magneto is also able to do this stage because increased damage to humans, and that's a tier 2 passive, so you don't need Magneto to be tier 3. You can use a tier 2 Magneto, but I highly recommend the House of X uniform because it's a huge upgrade for him, but he can absolutely do this stage, although he's a pretty expensive character, I know. None of these character suggestions are really cheap. I'm not suggesting Professor X, by the way, I'm just saying brute force with a tier 3 if you're going to use them, if you're desperate to finish stage 32 each week. And then actually Cosmic Ghost Rider can do it. Now, I'm not sure how much of it is due to the CTP of Rage that I have on him, so I want a full disclaimer on this, and I want full disclosure that I do have a very pimped out build on him. I'm ranked 337, but a lot of people have told me he can do a lot of Shadowland stages that you wouldn't expect him to be able to do because of Power Cosmic Pulse. Now, what does Power Cosmic Pulse do, you say? It removes, well, whatever, removes active buff is fine, but here at the top, decreases all buff effects by 50% and the duration by 30%. This interacts in a very nice way for you, and in a very negative way for the Shadowland stages. So now I'm going to show you what that looks like in action. Now, keep in mind, I got a CTP of Rage and I got a maxed out build, but take a look at how much damage my 5th skill is doing before I use the 4th skill, okay? Now, just look at the numbers and see how high they are, right? My CTP of Rage is going to proc. Look at the numbers, right? 8,000, 9,000, 5,000. Okay, not bad. You can see their health went down maybe 100,000. Okay, not bad. Now let's use the 4th skill. See how much damage that did? Lizard lost like 90% of his HP. What happened to Lizard's HP? Sandman and Superior Octopus, they were lucky. They got out of the blast. But you know who didn't? Good old Kurt Connors. He wasn't able to get out of the blast. Now look at the same damage from my 5th skill. Look at that. Or same attack, 5th skill, but look how much damage, look how much more damage it does now. Lizard's dead. Kurt Connors is dead. And they took way more damage. Now look at this. 4th skill. Boom. They're gone. They are gone. Okay, let's test it again. 5th skill. Oh, I died. Okay. Anywho, you get the point. He can absolutely do this stage. I want to cue it up again to show you. The only annoying thing about this stage for Cosmic Ghost Rider is that sometimes his 3rd skill doesn't activate. So you want to get that heal and you want to get that immunity up, and they just hit you in a funny way, or the skill kind of just triggers without actually activating, so it goes on cooldown, but you don't actually get the benefits of it. But look at this crazy damage. Spider-Verse, never heard of him. Never heard of the Spider-Verse. What's the Spider-Verse? Alright, let's try this 5th skill here. Oh, we got interrupted. It's okay. Gonna blast off. There goes Electro. Electro's actually the biggest threat. 3rd skill's off. Gonna get them both in that blast, and they're done. Absolutely obliterated. That 4th skill is not to be slept on. So, if these tips have helped you out, I hope you can push your way to stage 32 every single week, because the rewards are gargantuan. The rewards for 33 and 34 aren't as good, but you should always try to push on for guaranteed rewards every week, because they are always worth at least something. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below if you have more suggestions, more tips, and more ideas for characters. Let me know. I would love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe. Love you. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.